I picked up a stray beastman from the black market to be my bodyguard. My best friend stared at him, wide-eyed. Holy shit, Mia, that's a wolf. I didn't believe her. Not until the Beastman Legion came searching my apartment. Is our boss here? They asked, crowding my doorway. Pure-blood wolf. The kind that kills without blinking. I put on my most innocent face. I only have a dog here. Then I patted his head. Good boy, James. He was wearing a muzzle, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Then, right in front of his entire crew, he wagged his tail. The Beastman Legion looked completely baffled. Boss, we've been looking for you for 6 months. And you've been behind our backs, playing pet for some human? Living alone after graduation, my biggest worry was safety. My best friend, Grace, had a solution. Get a big dog. It'll tear any intruder to shreds. I looked at my sad, empty bank account and hesitated. So I went to the black market and picked up a stray beastman. He'd been abandoned by his previous owners for being too aggressive. One of his ears was half gone, and he couldn't speak properly. The black market dealer practically gave him away for a few $100, just to get rid of him. But as I looked at his bulging muscles and fierce eyes, I felt an overwhelming sense of security. Any burglar would be scared stiff. I happily tossed him a few meaty bones. Here you go, big doggy. Eat up and get strong. But he just shot me a cold, disdainful glare and growled. He had zero self-awareness as a dog. I was a little disappointed. The dealer had said his name was James and that his vocal cords were damaged, so he couldn't bark. He was also aloof and wouldn't pay me much mind. But still, I really wanted to treat him like a real dog. So, even though I was scared, I nervously reached out my hand toward the messy but fluffy fur on his forehead. James arched his lean back, poised to attack. It's okay, it's okay. I'm a good owner. I gently scratched the side of his face and under his chin. He growled again, but this time, a soft rumble vibrated in his throat. See? No one can resist a good scratch from a human. Feeling bolder, I unfastened James's muzzle and chains. He froze, stunned for a second, then bared his sharp teeth at me. His enormous frame practically loomed over me. I trembled but didn't back away. The dealer told me his previous owners had sold him to underground fighting rings. They'd starve him for days, then throw him in to fight. That's why he said the muzzle should never, ever come off. But when I saw the raw, infected sores underneath, I couldn't help myself. The marks from the chains were already embedded in his skin. It looked painful. Don't bite me. I'm going to put some medicine on that. I took out some rubbing alcohol and cotton swabs, watching him cautiously. James seemed to understand my intention but remained on high alert, teeth bared and back arched, ready to pounce. So, I took a giant leap forward and dove right into his arms. While he was still in shock, I bonked him on the forehead twice. Don't you bare your teeth at your owner. It's very rude. This was probably the first time a human had ever dared to do that to him. Before, it was either electric shocks or being locked in a cage. Humans were both terrified of and condescending toward combat-bred beast men like him. So I decided to try a different approach. A mix of gentleness and dominance. You're my dog. I nuzzled his neck. No one is going to hurt you anymore. Just relax. Holy shit, Mia, that is obviously a wolf. Grace pointed at James, who was curled up in the corner, and practically jumped 3 feet in the air. I told you to get a big dog for protection, not a damn wolf. I set a bowl of freshly cooked meat porridge in front of James. As he lowered his head to eat, I snuck in a few more pats on his fluffy head. What are you talking about? My James is clearly a dog. Over the past few days, I'd read a ton of dog training manuals. James had gradually shifted from resistant to, well, clingy. Though he was still a bit reserved with his owner. He can cook, he can clean, and he's a first-rate guard dog. He makes all my meals, and he keeps the floor spotless. The only thing is, he refuses to sleep on the bed with me. He just curls up at my bedroom door, and you can't drag him away. As I said this, I looked at James with pity. He must have gotten used to sleeping on hard floors. He wasn't used to a soft bed yet. Grace's eyes widened. A dog isn't that smart. Cooking and cleaning? Only high-level wolf beastmen can do that. I quickly covered James's ears. Don't listen to the mean lady. He seemed to let out a soft chuckle. His tongue flicked out and licked the back of my hand, his eyes soft. His tail gently swayed, wrapping around me. I was overjoyed. See? How could that be a wolf? My James is so good and obedient. He's clearly a good dog. Grace just looked at me, speechless. Fine, whatever you say. But you'd better be careful. Beastmen have strong urges. And the way he looks at you is anything but innocent. I glanced at James. He looked back at me with wide, innocent eyes, his ears twitching almost imperceptibly. A new silver chain rested against the deep contours of his chest muscles, looking dangerously seductive. I swallowed hard. Who exactly had the strong urges here was still up for debate. James was a very good dog. As time went on, he finally accepted my invitation to sleep in the bedroom. He'd curl up on the edge of the bed, his half-ear brushing against the back of my hand. His body took up most of the space, but it was surprisingly comforting. Until the Beastman Legion showed up at my door. A leopard and a lion led the group. Their massive frames forced them to duck just to get inside. I shrank back. This notoriously brutal military unit was feared by all humans. Especially their leader, a wolfman whose face was plastered all over the wanted lists. Why would they suddenly show up at my place? The Beastmen crowded into my living room. Is our boss here? Pure-blood wolf. Kills without blinking. I shook my head frantically. It's just me here. And my dog. With that, I led James out to face them. The leopard in the lead twitched his eye violently. That's a fucking dog? I quickly explained. He might look a little big, but he's definitely a dog. I bought him from the black market as a guard dog. The dealer swore on his life he was a good boy. Come on, James, wag your tail. James lazily lifted his eyelids, and his big tail gave a little wag behind him. The entire room of beastmen fell silent. The lion stared, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. Boss, what the hell are you? James shot him a warning glance. The lion instantly shut his mouth. After a long pause, he rubbed his hands together. Look, miss, here's the deal. This, dog, is a core member of our unit. How about you name a price, and we'll take him back with us? My face went pale. Take him back? How could James be part of the Beastman Legion? But looking at his massive size, I guess it was possible. But that legion was mostly made up of ferocious, pure-blood beastmen. James was covered in scars, couldn't talk, and was missing an ear. They would definitely bully him and look down on him. No, his injuries were probably from his time with them. I looked at James. I could almost picture what his life in the Legion was like. Forced to sniff explosives, then mercilessly beaten and mocked. Tossing him a meatless bone would have been considered a great kindness. Tears welled up in my eyes as I stood protectively in front of James. No. You can't take him. The beastmen's expressions instantly turned grim. Their massive bodies, each one looking like it could fit two of me, closed in. Their muscles were just as tight and bulging as James's. One slap could probably kill a person. I trembled but stood my ground in front of James. He nuzzled my shoulder, as if to soothe me. Then, he bared his teeth and let out a low growl. The beastman's expressions instantly cleared. The lion scratched his head. Whoa there, ma'am. It was all a misunderstanding. Just kidding around, don't mind us. James gave him a cold look, then stretched out his tongue to lick my cheek. His big paw wrapped around my waist as if asking for praise, and he nuzzled his head against me. I stroked his fluffy hair and glared at the Beastmen. Don't you dare bully my James. The Beastmen all let out a collective sigh. The leopard looked exasperated. All right, we found him. That's enough. I think the boss has his own plans. Let's get out of here. With that, he smacked the lion on the head. He led the group of Beastmen out of my apartment. I clutched my racing heart, terrified. I collapsed onto the sofa, trying to catch my breath. That was a scary bunch of Beastmen. I stroked James's head, which was resting on my lap. Were they mean to you in the Legion? You can tell me. James's ears folded back slightly, and he let out a few pathetic whimpers. His wet eyes seemed to be pleading with me. My heart ached for him even more. Come here, let your owner give you a hug. He licked his back teeth, as if smiling. Then he pounced, pinning me underneath him. Good owner, a deep, magnetic voice rumbled in my ear, laced with a hint of laughter. I want kisses, too. I froze. Since when could James talk? He tried to press in closer for a kiss. I pinched his mouth shut. James, when did you learn how to talk? He took the opportunity to lick my palm. Just now. A jolt went through me, and I quickly pulled my hand back. I looked at him, half believing. You're not lying to me, are you? Puppies aren't allowed to lie. It makes their owners angry. I poked his forehead. He rested his head on my stomach and looked up at me. His eyes were innocent and pure. I'm not lying. Cross my heart and hope to die. I sighed and grabbed both his ears. You are a puppy. James let out a low chuckle. His chest was pressed so tightly against mine that I could feel every vibration ripple through me. I felt a little flustered and tried to push him away. But he wouldn't budge, his paws clamping down on my wrists. He rubbed my skin, as if feeling the frantic beat of my pulse. Don't be afraid. They didn't bully me. That group of Beastmen, just like me, were abused and discriminated against by humans. That's why they were hostile toward you at first. My eyes widened in surprise. The brutal Beastman Legion had a past like that? It seemed I had misjudged them. Just as I was thinking about finding a chance to apologize, they showed up at my door again. The Beastmen were carrying bag after bag of gifts. Once again, they filled my living room like a gang of thugs. But this time, their expressions were shy and awkward. Ma'am, we brought a few little things for you. Please accept them. I nervously opened one of the small bags. The gold inside was so bright it nearly blinded me. This was a little thing? The lion rubbed his hands together. We were rude last time. We're really sorry for scaring you. He glanced at James, who was standing behind me. He flinched and looked like he was about to drop to his knees. I quickly softened my tone. I was wrong, too. I thought you were bad guys. James told me you were hurt by humans, and that's why you disliked me. The leopard crossed his legs, sitting casually on the sofa. He smiled at me. We wouldn't dare dislike you. I gathered my courage and moved a little closer to them. You know, there are good humans, too. If you try to get to know us, maybe you can let go of the past. The leopard let out a snort. Thanks, but it's not that easy. The next second, my hand was on top of his head. The leopard's eyes went wide, and his words caught in his throat. The entire room fell dead silent. I was the only one who didn't notice, even scratching him under the chin. This wasn't a leopard, he was a big cat. And no cat can resist affection from a human. The leopard started to purr. I couldn't help but fantasize. Everyone wants both a cat and a dog. Maybe I should adopt another one. The leopard froze, then let out a wail. He shot up, tucked his tail between his legs, and hid behind the sofa. His eyes were wide with fear, looking small and helpless. But that didn't save him from James's attack. He looked like he had gone insane. His fur stood on end, his claws and fangs were bared. He lunged at the leopard, scratching and biting, leaving several bloody marks. I yelled for him to stop. James. James. I was just kidding. He spat, a mix of blood and fur still between his teeth. He turned to look at me, the fury in his eyes not yet faded. James sneered. Are you feeling sorry for him? In the end, the leopard paid a hefty sum to replace my now demolished furniture. The other beastmen looked like they wanted to shrink into little balls. They timidly said goodbye and fled as if they'd seen a ghost. I couldn't help but scold James. This is all your fault. The mood was perfectly fine. He sneered. Oh, it was fine, all right. If I'd been a second later, you would have been ready to adopt them all, wouldn't you? I tugged his ear, teasing him. Are you jealous? What would you do if I really did get a cat? James shot me a fierce glare. You wouldn't dare. I'd rip its throat out, so you'd never even think of getting another pet. The malice in his eyes was real. Even I couldn't help but shiver. I asked meekly. James, they all seem so scared of you. Are you really just an abandoned stray? His Adam's apple bobbed. The coldness in his eyes vanished, replaced by a pitiful expression. Yeah. So you have to be good to me, owner. One dog is enough for you. My half-doubting look softened again. I stroked his cheek, and he practically buried his entire head in my hand. A James like this couldn't possibly be a bad dog. Good boy. I tossed a few treats into his mouth. James looked completely satisfied, even getting bold enough to nibble on my fingertips. His tail was wagging high in the air, seeming a bit excited. Something felt off. James's mood had been unusually volatile these past few days. I touched his forehead. It felt a little hot. I quickly grabbed the silver chain around his neck and led him to the bedroom. James, do you have a fever? He whimpered and grew even clingier. His large hand started to wander restlessly, nibbling at the crook of my shoulder. I held his face in my hands. James's eyes looked dazed. His pupils were dilated, but they burned with desire. Like a dancing flame. I couldn't break free from his grip and started to panic. Let me go get you some fever medicine, just let go of me for a second. But my strength was nothing against his. It was like I was just tickling him. James licked my cheek and chuckled softly. I don't have a fever. My dear owner must have never raised a beastman before. Don't you know that besides fevers, they also go into heat? My world tilted. I'd only seen stories about it on TV. When a beastman is in heat, if their desires aren't satisfied, they become incredibly aggressive and clingy. No wonder James had been stuck to me like glue these past few days. My heart ached as I watched his breathing grow heavier. I brushed back his damp hair and rubbed the top of his head. Is it really bad? I'm sorry, I don't have any experience with this. What should I do now? His body tensed. His expression grew even more pained as he stared at me intently. Owner, it's really, really bad. I was even more clueless. How can I help you feel better? He licked his sharp teeth, a sly smile playing on his lips. Turn around, or give me your hand. I hesitated, then extended my hand. The next second, he grabbed it and guided it downward. I yelped and snatched it back. My palm was burning, and my face was even hotter. No, I'll just turn around. He raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? I nodded firmly and slowly turned my back to him. The next moment, a strong arm wrapped tightly around my waist. The next day, I woke up in James's arms. His big tail was curled lightly around my waist, and the scent of last night still lingered in the air. My face flushed red, then white. Finally, I gave him a hard punch. You bad dog. I hate you. He was half lying on top of me and hissed in pain from the sudden blow. His eyes were slightly squinted, a look of pure satisfaction on his face. Thank you for helping me last night, owner. He nuzzled my nose. He seemed completely used to the pet name and the intimate position. But I wasn't. Is this what it's like to have a dog? This close, this intimate, it didn't feel like an owner and a pet. It felt more like a pair of lovers. The thought made my face burn. I pushed at his shoulder, trying to create some distance. Okay, get up. Time for breakfast. I deliberately put on a cold expression to hide my unease. But he just pressed closer, looking displeased. Trying to kick me out of bed already? James's warm breath on my skin sent a shiver down my spine. He let out a low chuckle, looking more like a bad dog than ever. Didn't you know, owner? The heat doesn't just last for one night. It lasts for a full 3 months. For the next few days, I stayed by James's side almost constantly. After that night, he seemed afraid of scaring me and didn't cross any more lines. But his perpetually feverish body and his ragged breathing, which could have been weakness or seduction, was still more than enough to unnerve me. I had to call my boss and ask for an extended leave of absence. I was expecting him to get angry, but instead, I got a surprising call back. Mia, right? You don't have to come in for the rest of the year. I was stunned. Are you firing me? He let out an awkward laugh. Of course not. How could I? What I mean is, you've worked so hard for the company for so long. As a reward, you get paid leave, plus an all-expenses-paid, 7-day trip to Europe. Huh? I was dumbfounded. Since when did my Scrooge of a boss become so generous? But looking over at James, I didn't have time to dwell on it. I placed a damp towel on his forehead and smiled at him. My boss gave me the whole year off. James's eyes shone brightly in the light, as if he'd known all along. He buried his face in my shoulder and took a deep breath. This way, we can be together forever. He wasn't wrong, but something about the way he said it felt off. I read online that Beastmen become extremely attached to their owners during their mating season. They might even resort to extreme measures to keep them close. I was probably overthinking it. But why did I have this feeling that James had something to do with my boss's sudden generosity? Just as I was about to ask, there was a shuffling sound at the door. It was the Beastmen, here to visit James. The leopard was still limping, his injuries not fully healed. Dog, how are you feeling? I covered James's ears. My dog is young and healthy. Don't you call him old? The Beastmen sighed again. With this little interruption, I temporarily pushed my suspicions aside. I gave them some space and went to the kitchen to cut up some fruit. But then I got a text from Grace. Holy shit. I told you he wasn't a dog. She sent me a link. The description matched James perfectly. And the official classification was an SSS rank pureblood wolf. There are only a handful of wolfmen at this level in the entire world. In this country, it's just the leader of the Beastman Legion. He's known for hating humans, loves to toy with them and torture them. But he can talk. Last time I was over, you said your dog's vocal cords were damaged, right? So, it can't be him, right? My mind went blank. Thinking about how the other Beastmen treated him, how he suddenly started talking, and my boss's fawning attitude. It all started to make sense. But I still didn't want to believe that James had been lying to me all along. The way he acted cute, the affection, was it all fake? I headed back to the living room to confront him. But then I overheard the Beastmen talking to James. Boss, we've been looking for you for 6 months. And you've been behind our backs this whole time, playing dog for some human? I couldn't believe it. The fruit platter slipped from my hands and crashed to the floor. James and the other Beastmen turned to look at me in shock. The Legion members looked like they were facing a firing squad, sweating bullets. They tucked their tails and scurried away. James stared at me, his Adam's apple bobbing. It's not what you think. In that moment, I knew everything. The dog I'd raised was suddenly a wolf, and not just any wolf, but the leader of the Beastman Legion. Why did he get close to me? Did he just want to mess with a human, to watch her despair? It was too much to take in. I felt like I was breaking. Bad dog. Liar. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. Just go. I don't want you anymore. I ran for the door. I glanced back one last time at James. Under my disappointed gaze, his ears trembled, and his face fell. I ran all the way back to the black market where I'd bought him. I found the dealer and demanded an explanation. But he seemed genuinely clueless about James's true identity. He waved his hands, insisting it had nothing to do with him. That wolf was passed around the underground fighting rings a few times. It was because he was too fierce and brutal. No one could tame him. Electric shocks, waterboarding, starvation, he endured it all. I might have lied about his breed, but everything else I told you was the truth. Hearing about what James had been through, I felt a mix of pity and hurt. I wanted to yell at the dealer, but he just shoved me aside impatiently. You think you can buy a good dog for a few $100? In your dreams. Humph. It's easy to fool naive kids fresh out of college like you. Defeated, I walked home in a daze. What greeted me was a dark, empty apartment. The lamp that I always left on for myself when I worked late was off. There was no smell of noodle soup coming from the kitchen. There was no wet nose nuzzling against me. James was really gone. He was so disobedient when I wanted him to be, and so damn obedient now that I didn't. My eyes stung, and I collapsed onto the sofa. A wolf is a wolf. He didn't have an ounce of a dog's loyalty. Who needs him? I could live perfectly fine without him. This trip to Europe? I'll just go by myself. I said that, but I felt like a ghost. Every time I looked at the sofa, I saw James curled up on it, whining for my attention. Every time I saw the dishes, I remembered James bustling around the kitchen, the tiny apron looking like it would burst at the seams on his muscular frame. Even when I was typing on my computer, I could picture James resting his head beside my hand, his bright eyes staring up at me as if to say, "Owner, pet me." And every time, I'd give in and scratch his head like crazy. Grace waved her hand in front of my vacant eyes. Hello? Earth to Mia. Is it really that serious? It's not like your dog died. If you miss him that much, just go find him. I shook my head mournfully. Grace sighed. Fine, fine. I'll go on this trip with you, okay? If this keeps up, I'm worried you're going to waste away from sadness. And just like that, we were off. The next day, she dragged me to Italy. But at the hotel, we ran into an unexpected guest. Grace's eyes nearly popped out of her head. She grabbed my arm tightly. Isn't that your dog? Did he follow you here? I looked across the lobby. There was James, talking with a group of humans. He was dressed in a tailored suit, looking refined and intense. His massive frame strained against the buttons of his shirt. He looked like a thug in a suit, a civilized beast. A far cry from the creature who was begging for pets and wagging his tail just a few days ago. Grace scrolled through her phone. The news says the Beastman leader is here for a summit with human politicians. So, he probably didn't follow us, right? I gazed at James from a distance. He was effortlessly handling the politicians, his eyes calm and composed. He was probably ready to cut all ties with me for good. I suppressed the wave of disappointment in my chest. It has nothing to do with me. He's not my dog anymore. With that, I walked straight past James. But his sticky, restrained gaze was impossible to ignore. To shake off this feeling of a breakup, Grace dragged me to the beach. She handed me a glass of sparkling water as we looked out at the endless ocean. Forget him. On to the next one. If you ask me, you should just get another dog. One that's smarter, better behaved, and actually knows how to please someone. Just as she finished speaking, several large figures blocked our view. It was the Beastmen. The lion looked like he was about to cry. Please, don't get another one. The boss is already killing us. He insisted on having the summit here just so he could catch a glimpse of you. You two need to make up, fast. We can't take much more of this. The bruised and battered beastmen nodded furiously. I clenched my fists. And even with all that, he won't come see me himself? They scratched their heads, looking conflicted. The boss has his reasons. But, he told us not to tell you. Fine. Just fine. I ground my teeth. He was the one who lied to me first, and now he was avoiding me. Did he think I couldn't live without him? James, you asked for this. I pushed through the crowd and ran straight to an Italian pet market. The beastmen there were gentle and obedient, looking at me with hopeful, devoted eyes. Any one of them would be better than James. I gritted my teeth and pointed at a golden retriever. I'll take him. I led the little golden retriever back to the hotel. Along the way, he acted like a considerate boyfriend, holding an umbrella for me and draping his jacket over my shoulders. His tail wagged like a helicopter propeller. But my mind was elsewhere. I returned to the hotel, feeling lost, to find Grace gone. The room was pitch black except for a single dim lamp. A figure was slumped on the sofa, as if he had been waiting for a very, very long time. James's eyes looked like they wanted to devour the golden retriever whole. You really dared to bring another dog home? I stood protectively in front of the golden retriever. Don't you dare. The jealousy in his eyes was about to spill over. His voice was a low growl. And you're protecting him? The next second, James lunged. His overwhelming presence and raw wildness were a stark reminder that he was, indeed, a fierce and brutal wolf. The golden retriever was pinned, his throat in James's jaws, only able to let out a few pathetic whimpers. I had never seen James get truly serious before. I was completely frozen. A clap of thunder outside snapped me out of it. I met his bloodshot eyes and my legs gave out. I collapsed to the floor. Seeing me trembling, James seemed to hesitate for a second. In that brief moment of distraction, the golden retriever found a gap by the door and bolted without a second thought. James's ears drooped. He took a step toward me, then stopped. The sight of me curled up in a ball seemed to have wounded him deeply. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. I still hadn't recovered from the terrifying scene. I just kept shuffling backward. James gritted his teeth. He clearly couldn't stand my rejection. He grabbed my ankle and dragged me into his arms. An irresistible force pinned me beneath him. He buried his head in my neck. He seemed to be trying to get back on my good side, to whine and act cute like he always did. I felt a wet, hot sensation on my cheek. He was gently licking me. Owner, don't leave me. I'll be a good dog. Better than him, more obedient than him. I felt a wave of helplessness. I stroked his cheek, and he leaned into my hand with a look of pure bliss. But the next second, he froze. I gathered all my strength and looked him straight in the eye. James, you're not a dog. You're a wolf. I think we should. But he clearly didn't want to hear the rest of that sentence. So he shut me up with his mouth. My eyes widened in disbelief. Because this time, James wasn't licking me or nuzzling me. He was kissing me. A suffocating, desperate, messy kiss. A few salty tears fell. His pent-up emotions finally exploded, and he gripped the back of my head fiercely. In the dark room, the only sounds were wet noises and my whimpers. When I finally got a moment to breathe, he pulled me back in, kissing me even deeper. James seemed to want to merge with me completely, to pass through my skin and become one. I could feel his heart thundering against mine. Our bodies were tangled together. Finally, as if waking from a dream, he let me go. I clutched the front of his shirt, coughing violently. I had no idea how to face the dog I had been raising for the past 6 months. What was that? My mind was a complete blank. I scrambled for the door. As I left, I glanced back at James. His eyes were full of satisfaction and longing. But not a single ounce of regret. Whoa, interspecies romance. Seeing Grace's sunglasses about to fall off her face, I quickly pushed them back up. Ahem, it's not exactly like that. I tried to sound serious. James is a pure-blood wolfman. His intelligence is higher than a human's. And I haven't exactly accepted it yet. It's just a lot to process. Grace rolled her eyes. Oh, give me a break. Back when James was at your place, your eyes were practically glued to his pecs. Who fell for who first is still up for debate. My face fell. Okay, you've made your point. To be honest, after last night, I did have a bit of a realization. James had never really seen me as his owner. He only called me that when he was apologizing or trying to be cute. Like it was some kind of roleplay. And my feelings for him weren't exactly normal either. The thought made me grit my teeth. I was hoping to use this time to sort things out, but that bad dog had run off again. It had been 2 weeks since I got back from Europe. The news said the peace treaty between humans and beastmen had been signed. The two species were now equals, with a whole new set of laws. But James still hadn't come home. All my waiting only brought his subordinates to my door. The lion looked frantic. The boss is at an underground fighting ring. He's going crazy. I shot up from my seat. The leopard glanced at me. A wolf's mating season is long and agonizing. He needs a constant outlet. He held back a lot these past 6 months at your place. Now it's all coming out, but he's terrified of hurting you. 6 months? I thought the heat was only 3 months. So that was another lie. I was angry and worried all at once. I grabbed my jacket and rushed out the door. When I got to the fighting ring, the place was roaring. The sounds of vicious tearing and deafening screams were enough to burst my eardrums. I covered my ears and sat in the front row. James had a dog beastman in a death grip, slamming his fists down again and again. His jaw was clenched, veins popping on his arms. It was hard to tell what was blood and what was sweat. His suit jacket was gone, leaving only his powerful, muscular body on display. I screamed out. James! Stop fighting. He froze, his pupils shrinking. He instinctively looked in my direction. Then, as if he'd been burned, he looked away and tried to hide his bloody gloves behind his back. The fight was over. The crowd was cheering for him. The scoreboard lit up in a riot of color, 13-0. The referee raised James's hand, declaring him the winner. But James showed no sign of victory. His tail and ears drooped, and he kept trying to hide his hands. I'd caught him in the act again. Seeing him about to slink away, I pushed through the crowd toward the exit. But there were too many people, and James's broad back was getting farther and farther away. I clenched my jaw, closed my eyes, and took a tumble. I misjudged the force and actually scraped my knee. A gasp went through the crowd. Through the tears welling up in my eyes, I finally saw James rushing toward me, a look of panic on his face. He swept me up into his arms without a word. His warm embrace was so reassuring. I leaned contentedly against his shoulder and gave his long-coveted chest muscle a squeeze. Good doggy. Something was clearly off with James. As he lifted my skirt to apply medicine to my leg, his breathing was heavy. His eyes kept drifting to my body before he'd quickly look away. His Adam's apple bobbed. What happened to your new little golden retriever? I snorted. You scared him off. The corners of his tightly pressed lips finally turned up in a slight smile. He carefully pulled my skirt back down and put away the first aid kit. He made a move to leave, but his knees were still on the floor in front of me. I chose my moment. Where do you think you're going now? He looked up at me with those wet, pitiful eyes. I'll hurt you. A couple of buttons on his shirt were undone, whether by accident or design, I couldn't say. From my angle, I had a perfect view. The red marks on his chest were prominent, a deliberate seduction. Here we go again. But damn it, I was a sucker for this. I cleared my throat. Your heat, besides fighting, are there any other solutions? James stared at me. His gaze was so full of meaning that it made me think of things. My face grew hot. Seeing me hesitate, he leaned forward, resting his head on my waist. His tail was held high, practically begging. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to lie to you before. I swallowed. And from now on? His ears perked up, full of excitement. I'll never lie to you again. If I do, I'm just a puppy. I tweaked his nose. Bad dog. He let out a low chuckle. Good owner, help me. The zipper on the back of my dress slid down, and the cool air sent a shiver through me. But his hands were as hot as fire. As it turns out, a moment of weakness can lead to a lifetime of regret. Seducing me during the peak of his heat, what a brilliant move. I rubbed my aching lower back, wanting to turn into a beast man myself just so I could bite him. Having had his fill of me, James looked completely satisfied. First thing in the morning, he was all over me, nuzzling my shoulder. From now on, I'm your only dog, right owner? Something felt very wrong. I just couldn't figure it out. The suit-wearing thug from a few days ago, the king of the fighting ring, had this version of James eaten them? To test my theory, I raised my hand and gave him a light slap. James just purred and rubbed his cheek against my hand. He stared at me intently. Again? Damn it. He liked it. Now I was almost certain. James wasn't forced to be a dog. He genuinely liked being one. A wolf that big, wagging his tail and acting cute for me every day. Yet on TV, he was the picture of a sophisticated, elite leader. The contrast was unreal. And I also discovered that he was incredibly jealous. The golden retriever that ran off was found and adopted by Grace. Now, whenever she has free time, she brings him over to my place. James would grind his teeth and storm off to the kitchen to cook for us. Ha! A dog is a dog. Low intelligence. He said with a look of disdain, arms crossed as he watched the golden retriever struggle awkwardly with a fork and knife. I was annoyed. Why would you say that? Go back to your cooking. He pouted, looking hurt. Right. He's the precious one. Can't say a single bad thing about him. I burned my hand on the stove, and you don't even care. I shot up from my chair. I rushed to the kitchen, grabbed his hand, and ran it under cold water. Where's the burn? Does it hurt? There was no reaction. I looked closer and realized there was no burn at all. I looked up and met his sly, cunning eyes. I couldn't help but punch his shoulder. You bad dog. He wrapped his tail around me pitifully. You were only looking at him. You weren't looking at me. Sigh. Jealous again. On the outside, I acted annoyed, but on the inside, I was secretly thrilled. If you want me to look at you, you'll have to use some tricks. A small smile played on his lips. He grabbed my hand and guided it to his bare chest, covered only by an apron. The texture was divine. Are these the kind of tricks you had in mind, owner? James licked my cheek, then leaned in for another kiss. When we returned to the living room, I felt a little awkward. I tried desperately to hide my blushing face, only to notice that Grace looked even more flustered. I pointed at her. Your face is as red as a tomato. What have you been up to? Grace's eyes darted toward the golden retriever. The dog had his head buried in Grace's shoulder, a sly look in his eyes that was suspiciously similar to a certain wolf's. He was whining and acting cute. Grace huffed. It's your husband's fault. He was making fun of my little puppy. My puppy was upset, so I had to comfort him. I stared at her, then at the dog. You sly dog, you. You learn fast. After Grace and the golden retriever left, James wrapped his arms around me from behind. He sounded impatient. Finally, the annoying guests are gone. Did you hear what your friend called me? I played dumb. What? James grinned and pulled the leather belt from his waist, using it to tie my hands together. Good girl. Call me your husband. I wanted to cry. What was I thinking all those months ago, bringing a wolf into my home?